welcome to House Call. I have Chad, Discognition, with me today. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me.
You and I have been trying to make this happen, and I'm so glad it worked out to kind of get a holiday special going, if you will, and have this conversation together. I've been watching your wonderful trajectory, and it's something to behold to watch your success and growth as an artist. And I'm really looking forward to our conversation. To kind of kick us off, Chad, kind of take everyone back to the beginning and where your origin story with music started for you.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, yeah, thank you for having me. Really, really stoked to be here. I'm glad we were able to make this happen. Origin story, both of my parents were musicians. My still is a musician. I guess you never really stop being a musician, right? But my dad was a lead singer in an 80s hair metal band. And he still sings quite frequently. He actually just auditioned for The Voice. So fingers crossed for him. But, I've been involved with music ever since I was a kid and a young kid. And I think the real first foray into it is when I was in sixth grade. You decide, oh, do you want to do band or do you want to do choir? That's at least how it was where I grew up. And in elementary school, most of my friends were girls. And so they were all playing the flute. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll play the flute then. So yeah, sixth grade through eighth grade, I was a flute player and got involved with music pretty much right around then. Went to high school, continued playing the flute in the marching band and through the 4 years of concert band until I switched to percussion my junior year of high school. I had such a good time. And that's where it's like, I always loved performing music. And I kind of caught that bug early with band. And then, went to college and was on the drum line at Ohio University for 5 years. And that was just the best time. Even through all of that, that's more of my like kind of classical side of music. But when I got to high school, I was privileged to go to a really well-off high school and school system. And they had these brand new Macs at the time. And of course, they all came with GarageBand.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, well, what is this? And I'm like 14 years old checking it out. And I was like, how can I get this on my PC at home? And, back in the LimeWire computer virus days, I found like a cracked version. I probably shouldn't say this, but a cracked version of Fruity Loops 5 back when I was like 14. And that was kind of the start of the actual music production journey all the way to where I am today. But, music's always been a part of my life. It'll always be a part of my life. It's the performance of music aspect that really does it for me because it's always been there. So, I don't really know any different.
I always felt like the percussion group and band was having way more fun. I play clarinet and way more fun. So that's interesting that you pivoted over to that and then did marching band too. So that's a great background.
Yeah, that was actually what did it for me. We had in eighth grade, they have what's called eighth grade night, and all the eighth graders from the surrounding middle schools go to the high school and participate at halftime with the marching band.
Oh, yeah.
And you have like a day of practice like during school, and you go out there. And I saw a drum line in real life for the first time, and I was like, I got to do that. I'm doing that. How do I switch to that? And it took me some learning. Obviously, I wasn't a percussionist, and I started taking private lessons and ended up making that switch. And I'm very glad that I did. Nothing against the flute. I loved playing the flute, but not for me, as they say these days.
That's such a great background story. So, Fruity Loops, GarageBand, when did electronic music really first grab you? Did you have a moment where you were like,
Well, so my dad is 80s rock through and through. When I get into his car, it's always Journey playing or Grand Funk Railroad, like
really?
Foreigner. He is like, that is his thing, and he found it, and that's what he's listened to ever since then. My mom has always had more of an eclectic taste in music. When I would get in her car, it was like, there might be Disturbed or Static X playing, or the next day I'd get in and there's, funnily enough, one of my first forays, The Crystal Method. And their album Tweekend had come out. And this is kind of the earliest I can remember, but she had played that album in the car. And I was like, this is dope. What is this? But even before that, I feel like, and I'm getting my timeline, probably mixed up because I was so young at the time, but like, she was always into the Chicago house type of
Yeah.
stuff, so
Yeah.
she's listening to that stuff, Daft Punk, obviously, Crystal Method, a lot of that stuff, and I was like, "This is really cool," and then, somewhat embarrassingly to admit, I was really, really into Dance Dance Revolution. I was like a DDR fiend, and because of that, that's all electronic music, and so I was like, "This is my jam right here," and then it kinda really gripped me, and actually, this is probably a good place for this, but, back gosh, this would have been, like, 2004,
Yeah.
2005?
Mhm.
I was in 8th grade, freshman year of high school. In Columbus, there's an anime convention called OhioCon,
Yes, there is.
and, they used to have a DDR tournament every year. Well, of course, being in the DDR like I was, I went and, I get knocked out first or second round. I thought I was good. I wasn't. But they had like a rave in the ballroom there that went all night. And so I was 14 years old and I'm like, well, I'm going to go check this out for sure. And that was like my first quote unquote rave that I'd ever gone to. And ever since then, I was like, wow, this is like, this is my thing, this is my scene, these are my people, everyone's just unequivocally themselves, and it was back when no one cared who the DJ was, they just wanted the vibe. So, things have obviously shifted since then, but that was kind of my first, like, real, I would say, electronic music event, that really gripped me.
That's a good one too, and I love our Ohio connection because that's really where I discovered house music too, was in Ohio. It's the Midwest is a special place to me for those memories and foundations. So I love that you discovered it at OhioCon. That's a great story.
Yes.
And before you were Discognition, you were making very different music at first. Tell me a little about that chapter in your life and what was kind of the turning point that led you to make this shift.
Yeah, so, when I was in college, so this will be, like, 2010, I was a sophomore, I had really started to want to learn how to produce music seriously. Before it was just like, bits and bops here, like not really taking it super seriously. But down in Athens at school, there used to be this party called Dave Rave. That my buddy Brandon Thompson and David Alexander, they both ran this party, and it was like they had always gone to Ultra and these major music festivals, and so they decided to bring a piece of that to Athens, this little rural college town. And I went to that first party, and this is right around the time where Skrillex had just come out with Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites, and dubstep was kind of taking over. At least in Ohio, it was.
It was, yeah, for sure.
So I was like, this is pretty cool. These are interesting sounds. Like, I've always loved hip hop and trap. And so like that kind of music was really appealing to me with Flosstradamus and that stuff. So I started, making dubstep back in 2010, and that was mostly a product of the environment that I was in. Not to say that I didn't like it, but I was like, this is all I'm hearing. This is what's inspiring me at the moment. Let's do that. And so Black Rabbit was born. And actually, my nickname on the drumline in college was Rabbit. And I think the black part speaks for itself. But I decided to, dive in head first with that. And Brandon kind of taught me how to DJ a little bit. But before that, they had a showcase for local DJs to kind of get a slot at a space to play a show. And I was like, let me submit a mix and do that. And, dubstep and trap, I still love that stuff, but it started to head into a direction that I did not particularly like musically. People hear me talk shit about rhythm all the time. And I mean it with the best of love. It's just not for me. And I could see that dubstep and bass music was just going more and more and more aggressive. And I was like, like I love melody. I love feeling emotion, deep emotion when I'm listening to music. And so, I'd gotten pretty deep into Anjuna beats and listening to trance around the world. And I was like, this is, I've always heard trance, but at the time I didn't really care that much. And then, I started to kind of dive a little bit deeper into that. And I was sending demos as Black Rabbit to Anjuna beats, and it wasn't trap and dubstep. I was making like more down tempo melodic music. And
Mhm.
so I was like, well, I can't be making dubstep and like melodic house under one alias. In a perfect world, it wouldn't matter, but that's not
Yeah, I hear you there too.
marketing and branding works. So Discognition started as a side project. I was like, this will just be my, chill, deeper melodic alias, and then Black Rabbit will be my full
Yeah,
thing. And, I started to have some success as Discognition, and I was like, no, I actually have more fun writing this. So in 2017, I just kind of made the full switch, and it's been a ride since then.
that's a great story. How did you pick the name Discognition at the time?
You know, a lot of my inspiration, so I went to college for game design. Both of my parents being musicians, they actually both owned video game stores when I was growing up. And so I've always been a big gamer, and it's where I get a lot of my inspiration. And at the time, I was playing a game called Persona 5. And Persona 5 is about these people who have like a collective distorted cognition that needs corrected, so to speak. And I was like, distorted cognition is kind of a cool like topic. And so from there, I was like, discognition is kind of a cool theory or topic. And then it just kind of came from that. And it kind of has a deeper meaning for me at this point where, you know, a cognitive distortion to me is more in musical terms is there's no one way that I look at anything. There's so many people. It's like today, cognitive output is going to be trap. Tomorrow, my cognitive output might be lo-fi hip, and then the next day it'll be tech house. I don't know. So I kind of look at it as this all-encompassing, all of my musical ideas and kind of coming together as one.
Whole artist, the whole you. I like that.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a great story. How would you describe what you're going for with your music and kind of how did you end up really landing there? What's the test for you or kind of, your history and kind of what you evolved into makes total sense, but where you're going now with your music, is there anything that's really landing with you and musically?
Yeah. I mean, I've been going to shows obviously since I was a teenager. And, I really love melodic house and progressive house, but I would say these days it's starting to feel pretty stale. And it's not really inspiring me the way that it used to anymore. And so 2 years ago, I went to my first ARC Music Festival in Chicago. And there is some progressive there, but it is just like straight up booty bouncing house,
Oh, fun.
and it is just fun. It's just fun. And I feel like in our corner of the scene, it's so serious and like everyone's like trying to, it seems like everyone's trying to get nominated for a Grammy. And I'm like, look, man, I'm just trying to like dance and have a good time. And so the direction I'm going is to kind of like really bridge that gap between, fun house, like just makes you want to dance, but also has a more, I don't want to say intelligent, but intentional or methodical way behind it. So when I'm building a chord progression, I still want it to grip somebody in a certain way. But at the same time, I still want them to shake their ass when they're on the dance floor. So
Totally.
it's like, what does that look like? I don't know. And I think I'm evolving into that a little bit, especially now. And I think, kind of my latest remix that I did for Eli and Furs, we were chatting about a little bit, is
Mhm.
more in the vein of where I'd like to see my music go. It's got super saws like trance, but it's got breakbeat. It's got really nice emotional vocals. So I feel like that's kind of where I'm headed and I like it. And that's really what it means at the end of the day.
Is the key, right? If you make something you don't hate and you really actually like it and you wanna hear it again, that's really a great sign, so good for
Yeah.
you. You lived in a couple different places now. Does where you live affect your music or your travels affect your music? Kind of any inspiration with kind of a place?
Yeah. I think that's interesting to talk about is, my bass music days, I was in Columbus and it's still very much the dominant genre there. That's where Lost Lands is. And, that is the bass scene. And then, I moved to Los Angeles for a little bit and it was kind of this hodgepodge of everything. It never really felt like there was a true sense of community there. And I think that that's just Los Angeles. I think that's just the nature of the city. I had some great friends and the Anjuna family there was amazing. And then, I moved to Denver and the community here, I just cannot say enough about it. And I have great friends here, great support system, and a great community of people that not only inspire me, but support me to keep doing what I'm doing. And that has really shaped I think, my artist journey in a way that I didn't anticipate. All these friends just doing the same things that I'm doing, wanting to collaborate in different ways. And we're all just hoping to help each other. You know, none of us are like, I want to make it. Like, we're all just like, let's just help each other. And it's the rising tide lifts all boats type of situation. And I think it's shaped my sound in a way that I just didn't expect, because the progressive scene here, while it's booming, and I do think it's the best in the country for this style of music, the bass scene here is probably 2 or 3 times larger. You know, they call Denver the bass capital, and I think that that's true. But what's unique here is I don't have to be involved in it. I don't even know about anything that they're doing other than the shows I see get announced. And there's still such this thriving community around house music, around trance and progressive, around, you know, deep dub. There's all types of communities here for your own niche. And I love that Denver operates in a way that it's like there is maybe one dominant genre here, but you know, there's so many communities around everything else that you can find your people here with relative ease as far as I'm concerned.
That makes me really happy to hear that Denver is thriving musically. California is kind of going through, I think, a lull. We've got great shows in San Francisco always, some of the top shows, but as far as like local community, it seems to be struggling. My daughter's been going to some raves. She's in at the rave age now, and those seem to be really popping up and doing well in California. But super happy to hear that Denver is thriving, especially the collaborative and community environment. It's really important. So I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, yeah, I've heard nothing but great things about SF and the shows that they've got going on up there. I haven't had the pleasure of making it up there yet. Hopefully soon, but I hear nothing but great things from the community there.
Yeah, no, good people. Jerry from Droid Nines here, he does a lot with the community here and has a group through Fuse, and the Injuna group here is super strong. A friend of mine, Raj, is a big
Yes, I know Raj.
too.
Yes.
You know, that part is great as well. So it's good. You know, I think the community always has to reimagine itself every so often, and I think the industry as itself is trying to reimagine itself now to stream.
Yeah, all of it.
Let's talk more about collaboration. So, are there people that have been important to you on this journey, and kind of how did those relationships develop for you? Any strong collaborations that stand out to you?
Yeah, you know, I think the obvious one to point out is Devin Houseman. He has become, you know, my best friend, not only through music, but in just life in general. And, you know, I discovered him. I will never, for as long as I live, forget this. I'm driving, you know, to work in LA, and I lived in Woodland Hills at the time, and I'm driving to North Hollywood. So there's quite a bit of time to listen to music in the car.
Lot,
And
lots of
his first EP on Silk just kinda came on shuffle in Spotify, and I've been a big Silk fan for forever, and I heard it and I was like, "This is different. This is really special." And so I immediately just, like, learn everything I can about Houseman, and, you know, I learned he went to Berkeley, and I'm like, "Oh, shit, he really knows his stuff." And, you know, I just messaged him on Facebook, and I'm like, "Hey, dude, like, I really love this EP a lot. It's very inspiring. I just appreciate what you're doing." And from there, you know, we kinda connected and kept in touch, and he was, you know, in Boston and then in Boise, and we just started making music together. And I think because our music tastes so closely align, the collaborative nature of what we do together just kind of, it's so easy. There's people that you collaborate with where, you know, it kind of takes a little bit for you to get into the swing of things, but I feel like him and I are on the same wavelength to the point where we can knock out a track in a day or two, and it's coming out sounding very good, that we're both happy with it. You know, he's not only been a major influence, but, you know, just a huge collaborative partner musically for me. And the things he's doing with Clubhouse are really great. I don't collaborate very often. Wow, getting hair in my mouth. Sorry. I don't collaborate super often with people, but that's something I'm trying to change going into 2026. You know, I've got a new one I just finished up with my buddy Adam Stark, who's been on tour with Ilan Bluestone over the last 2 or 3 years and playing Dream State, and he's doing amazing things. I'm working with Alice KM on another track. And I've got a decent amount of folks hitting me up for collaborative opportunities. And I'm like, wow, it's interesting having people that want to work with me. Like, I'm not really super used to that. But, you know, I tend to kind of march to the beat of my own drum. No pun intended there, but I always love when I'm in the zone and in a flow state, and I don't have to answer to anybody. I just do my own thing. But that being said, there's so many amazing creative types out there that it's like, I don't always know what's best. And, if I sit in a silo, then it doesn't really give me a chance to expand or think outside the box. I love seeing what other people are doing. So, I probably have 4 or 5 other collabs and remixes that I'm working towards, in the coming months. And there's a big one coming in February that I can't totally announce yet, but it'll be a major player, and he's great. It's great getting to know him, and I've been just a big fan of his for years, an old Silk music guy, and I'll leave it at that for now. Yeah, collabs are something I'm trying to get more involved with. In the world of algorithms, it only helps your reach when there's more than one individual involved.
It's so true. It is it that also resonates with me too because I can get well, I like the isolation of creation, right? Collaboration kind of forces you to have conversations and their ideas and you many times do it remotely now too and get yourself out of your comfort zone. And then I don't know how you feel about this. I think every artist has different strengths. I know for me, I'm more of a I was a pianist and a vocalist who learned how to DJ and then wanted to learn how to produce. So I'm more of a musician than I am a studio engineer. So I'm naturally stronger, I think, at like the sound design or the arrangement and those kinds of, but definitely not as strong in the mix down applications. So, there's areas I think people bring strengths to sometimes where they can take a different look at it and an application to it.
Yeah, and again, I think that brings up another great point about collaborating with others. Is my last EP with Devin was Fade to Black and Red Alert that him and I did together. And what's funny about those 2 tracks are they were 2 songs that I had finished back in 2019, 2020.
Okay.
And I sent them around to Enhanced and Anjuna, and no one was biting. And then like last year, Devin was like, dude, you should just send me those and I'll do something with them. They came together pretty quickly. They're pretty true to my original ideas, but Devin went in and did what he did. And, again, he went to Berkeley. I did not. So he knows tons of tips and tricks and mixing things that I don't know. And I learn from him all the time. And for him to be able to take those and get them to where they were, and then have Yotto throw it in his radio show and Walker and Royce throw it in Insomniac Radio is like insane to me. These ideas I had that from 5 or 6 years ago, I think that even brings up another point of like leaving something on your hard drive and coming back to it after you've improved or you've got more experience. I think there's a lot of value there. We tend to, as artists, try to get it out as soon as possible. I think I'm on that. There's some people who hoard projects. I'm on the opposite. I'm like, let me just get it out.
See what happens.
So, yeah. Yeah. So it's great. And I've learned how to be patient these days, I think, with the creative process.
What advice would you give to kind of newer producers out there along the lines of sharing their music? A lot of times I think it's pretty, at least was for me when I first started to share. What are some tips and kind of ways to put yourself out there as a newer producer?
Yeah, I think it really depends on your goals.
Mhm.
I think if you do this as a hobby and you just want to create, just throw stuff up on SoundCloud and let people listen. But I think at the end of the day, we all want to get good at it or be good at what we're trying to make. So the best advice I have is to find a mentor. Like have somebody out there that you trust their ear, you trust their knowledge and bounce ideas off of them. I have a couple of people, I used to send tracks out for feedback to like 30 people, like, hey, what do you guys think of this? What do you think of that? And it's like, that can be helpful when you're first starting, but you need to start getting like tailored feedback. And so for me, that's been, Devin, obviously for me, Taylor Torrance, another guy that, I bounce ideas off of from time to time, Adam Stark, there's different people in different realms of the music industry that all have different insight. You might get a label guy that's like, hey, this is objectively good, but this doesn't fit the sound. Here's what you could do to make it fit the sound of the label. And then,
Yes.
yeah, and then you have another guy who's like, look, you're low end here. Regardless of what vibe you're going for, the mixing here, it could be a little bit better. So I would say have like two or three really established people that you look to for feedback rather than trying to get it from everyone and their brother. And then also have someone that is just a layman who's not a producer, who's not a DJ, who just is listening just to listen. And I think a lot more value can be found out of those people because I think we can get tunnel vision as DJ producers in the type of content we consume and the type of people we interact with every day. And, we haven't even talked about social media, but like that section of it is like, I feel like so many producers are making music for other producers when in reality, you need to be making music to the listeners or just for yourself. Like I think the average consumer is far more valuable in that.
The consumer is the ultimate vote, right? They're the ones that actually end up making it sticky. So that's really good advice. My next question for you was actually on the algorithms and social media. You're quite active, including Twitch too, and streaming. So how does that fit in with everything else that you're doing? And there's a lot of sentiment right now on kind of both sides of like social media is, people are making it too important, and then you've got others that are like, well, you can't live without it. It's a necessary item. What does that look like for you? And what's your
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack with that question. I think first and foremost, social media and content creation comes naturally to me, and I don't take that for granted. I've always been kind of a goofball. Back even in college, I was making vines. I was making dumb videos in like and I was just like taking photos and videos with my old digital camera, just like making dumb stuff of me drumming. I've always been doing that since I was, 16, 17 years old. And so I understand that like not everyone has been doing that. And so it doesn't come as easy to folks. But what I do challenge people to think about is social media, I would say, is necessary to promote a music career today. I would say that it's necessary. But in the same breath, you don't have to do it. No one's forcing anyone to do it. And people say like, "Oh, I just want to be a musician. I don't want to be a content creator." It's like, then don't be. Like there is nothing stopping you. But then people say, "Well, then how am I going to get my music out there?" And I'm like, "Okay, so you're answering your own questions. And secondly, if you think about beforehand, and I touched on this, I think last week, if you think about the 90s or the early millennium, like getting discovered was infinitely harder. Infinitely. The fact
about
that yeah, yes, I always go back, and this is pretty prominent back in the 2000s era. You've got, God, what do they call them? SoundCloud rappers, where it was like everyone was a rapper and everyone uploading their music to SoundCloud. And it's like,
yeah,
you get a catch 22 there where it starts to oversaturate the market. In the same breath, the cream rises to the top sometimes, most of the time, hopefully. But before even that, like before the internet, you had just engineered superstars. There were people that were marketable. They had some talent, but the music execs were like, this person has got it. And it's like,
it.
whatever that means,
Yeah,
you had to hope some music executive heard you. And now with social media, we are in charge of our own branding, our own marketing strategy, our own sound, our own everything. We control how the public perceives us and instead of a label or some big music company. And I think that's really important because you can have your own voice and you don't have to give that up for anything. And there's people on social media that they love that. They want to see that more. And so I challenge folks that hate being a content creator to see it as nothing but beneficial. Now, social media has its drawbacks. There's plenty of mental health issues that come along with social media, which is why more often than not, I post and ghost. I try not to doom scroll. It's inevitable some days, but it becomes this big comparison game and it can be tough. I've got plenty of friends that have been DJing and producing for, 30% of the time that I've been doing it, that are getting booked at EDC, that are getting these massive label deals. And it's, do I have some envy there? I think I used to, but everyone is truly on their own journey. And I believe that it's not about appeasing a label and it's not about getting to play EDC. It's about building your own community and fostering it and giving that community what they're looking for from you. You know, I have a lot of people who talk to me and they're like, you're so authentic, you're so genuine. And like, while that like it feels good to hear, it's like, I'm just myself, dude. Like, I don't have to put on this whole fake persona to build a music career. If people like it, great. If not, whatever. You know, that's kind of how I see it.
I love that. I also love the aspect too, and this has always really resonated with me is I'm always working on myself as a person and working on yourself. Your music naturally does that, right? You're constantly working on yourself when you're creating. And I think the same can be true with social media. If your ego is in check and you're using it as a tool for sharing yourself, and really your music is content creation as well, if you're being honest, you're
Yeah.
creating content that is a picture into who you are and what you create. At the end of the day, I think it's a good business tool, and you should harness that business tool, but at the same time, take your ego out of it and let it go. Working on our ego is always a lifelong.
It really is. It really is. And I think if people, and I always hesitate to say this, but your music career is a business.
It
And
is.
that sucks. It doesn't have to be. And I always say that, like, look, no one's forcing you to do it. But if you want to be a producer and you want to make a living off of your music, you have to treat it like a business because you got to pay taxes. You got to do all that stuff that a business has to do. And, you know, I was sitting there one day, you know, people are like Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, they make you pay for people to see your content. And I'm like, that has always been true.
Always the model.
If you know what a Big Mac is, that's because McDonald's has paid a buttload of money on marketing to tell you what a Big Mac is. Now, if you want people to know about your music career, you're gonna have to pay money to market that career. And that's just the nature of marketing. But again, you don't have to do it. And that's the thing is like, you don't have to do it. Is your music career going to go as far as it would without it? Probably not. But again, you don't have to do it and you can opt out at any time. It's kind of my philosophy. I don't have to do it, but I choose to do it, you know?
I love that you're treating it as a business too. I'm a business woman by trade too, and I think if you apply that to anything that you do in life, being creative is only one aspect. It is a full business, and that's really good advice about reinvesting in yourself. You're reinvesting in your laptop, you're reinvesting in your tools or your keyboard or your synthesizer. Why are you not investing in yourself to make every effort to be all you can be if you're going to do it?
Yes. Yes. I don't know what the phenomenon is called, but how you'll go out and you'll spend $15 on a cocktail, right? But you
Money.
go to the yeah, exactly. You go, you spend yeah, and if you're bringing a date, now you're up to $30, right? But you go on the app store, and let's say it's an app that, like, you learn music theory, and it gives you these lessons, and it costs $3.99. You're like, "Oh, I'm not gonna buy that." It's like, you just spent $30 at a cocktail lounge, and it's like, if you took that $30 and you put, I don't know, $2 a day and behind an ad on Instagram, you might actually gain some followers. And like for me, I had, and this is like just an interesting use case. So for anyone out there listening who doesn't think it works, I played a show at Temple here in Denver in August.
Yep.
And I hired a videographer. She was $200, worth every penny. I got paid $150 for the show. So I'm $50 negative. Businesses have expenses. Sometimes you go out in the red. I felt like having a videographer for the show because I knew it was sold out. It was for Cream, which is a major artist in our industry. And I was like, I'm going to hire a videographer. So she takes some videos. She got probably the coolest moment of me DJing that I've ever had. And I posted it and it started to kind of get decent engagement on Instagram. And I was like, well, you know what? Let me throw, I don't know, $30 and boost it this week. And then from there, it like skyrocketed. And it's not about going viral. It's about like bringing awareness to your brand. And so that was in August. Since then, I think I've spent a total of $350 total over the last 4 months on boosting that post. And I went from like 3,200 Instagram followers to I'm about to cross 10,000. And that's in 4 months.
That's
And
huge. What a great
it's,
story.
it, thank you. And it was like that aha moment to me where it's like, I literally am spending $5 a day boosting this post. And I get it. Not everyone can afford to do that. So I'm blessed to be able to do that. But even $1 a day, that's $30 a month towards something just slowly building recognition around your brand. Like that stuff really helps. And I think a lot of people that get so like meta sucks. Like social media is it's like it's existential at this point, especially with AI. But
Yes.
like you have to use it. It can help. And it's connected me with real people who love my music. And I I was going to say you can't put a price on that, but apparently you can.
So it's a return on investment, and that's tremendous growth. That's like tremendous growth. I love that story. Great case study.
Thanks.
Where do you see yourself headed next as part of the goals as an artist and as a business? Where do you think things are? Where do you want things to go? What are some goals and objectives you have for what's next for Discognition?
Yeah. I usually around this time of year sit down and think about my goals for the next year. And I honestly haven't done that. I've been sitting with myself and just kind of enjoying where I'm at, which I think I've had a hard time doing. I took an intentional, most people wouldn't notice, but like I intentionally didn't play any shows in December. I'm not playing any shows in January. And I did that intentionally because you can get burnt out without even realizing it. And, in the future, I think, I'd like to play more Super Bowls is where it's at. And by that, I mean, like, if I only play 5 shows next year, but I headline all of them or they're major music festivals, I'm perfectly okay with that. And it's not necessarily about quantity for me at this point. It is about quality. And so I've had to learn how to say no to certain things because I always want to play, I always want to do it. But I have to kind of approach it differently from that business mindset of like, is this worth my time and effort? Because I do get burnt out. It's like September every year. I slow way down. I hit a brick wall from
Yeah,
going every day, every morning. And so I think, on the DJ side of things, I'd like to start playing some more major music festivals. But on the production side, I used to say like, I want to get on AVA Deep this year. I'm going to make it happen. Now I think I'm at a place where I'm like, I just want to make music that I'm in love with, because I like all the music I've released. But I will say some of it is not functionally who I am as an artist. And when you chase labels or you chase trends, you compromise your voice and sometimes your identity. And I think I'm just kind of done with that. I'm ready to take it on for real and really spread my artistic wings and use social media as a way to just say, look, this is who I am as an artist. Take it or leave it.
I love that advice of really being yourself as an artist. There's kind of goes back earlier and kind of that sentiment you were sharing on the kind of progressive and melodic of there's something that has kind of gotten all of the same in the way that it has sounded, or labels will say, oh, that's not what we're looking for. We want it to sound like this. And I'm like, but you've already got that. So I think that's really good advice to own who you are as an artist. And we're not talking about technical skill or mixing down skill. Like those are the artist of who you are and the music that you make. I think that's really, really strong advice.
Yeah.
And it'll bring the industry forward too, making things that resonate with your
Yeah. Yeah. I really hope that people get into this. Making music is fun. It's really, really rewarding. And there's obviously a ton of stuff on the back end that can really fill your head. But, at the end of the day, if I'm sitting there in the morning with a cup of coffee and I'm just making some beats, then I'm living good.
is morning your time or evening? Do you have like a time of day that's best for you?
Morning. Every morning, this started when I moved to Colorado. I would have to be at the office at 8 a.m., and I was getting to a coffee shop every morning at 6 a.m. and I would work on music for 2 hours every morning, Monday through Friday. And then I'd walk over to the office at 8 a.m. I'd just find a coffee shop close by. And I have stuck with that schedule for the most part. And I find that it helps me because the chaos of the day hasn't happened yet. I've got a fresh mind. I'm not super stressed about anything yet because when I get home from work, man, it's tough for me to get in any other mindset other than sitting on my ass and doing nothing, you know? Like it's tough. And so in the mornings I find I'm most productive musically.
That's so funny. I'm glad I'm not alone in that. All right, a few fun wrap it up questions for you.
Yeah.
One piece of gear or a plugin that you cannot live without.
Ooh, this is an
I
interesting
love
question.
this is actually myself. I always love asking this question so I can go find something else to play with.
So for me, it's not one plugin, but it is a company that I'm gonna plug here. I don't
Oh,
I don't work for them. They don't sponsor me in any way. But at Heaviosity, they make some of the best plugins. Now, I always wanted to go into creating soundtracks for video games. Like Final Fantasy, the soundtracks in all of those games are so good to me. And I've been playing them from such a young age that I was like, I want to make help with audio and sound design with Final Fantasy. That's where I wanted to go.
I
But
love it.
what that has led to is like I have a very cinematic sound, I think, along with dance music that a lot of people don't have, which is why you hear all these like violins and piano and soaring vocals and things like that for me. And Heaviosity is mainly meant for cinematic scoring. And so I find their plugins very, very helpful for my sound. And you'll go in there and download something and you'll be like, yep, Chad used this. Chad definitely used that. And it's like all of them. So Curiosity plugins, really good.
Love things that give, the hair on your arms to stand up. I'm one of those people. And so I find that kind of cinematic sound, that emotional is like if you get the hair standing up on your arms, that's the ultimate test for me. And this sounds like
Yes,
that bill.
exactly. Exactly.
Best crowd or venue moment for you that you've had.
Ooh, wow. Okay. I've had a couple. I would say one of my biggest moments was getting to play the Purified showcase here in Denver with Nora and Pure and
Yeah,
Resident and Paige. And I was like
amazing.
a nobody on this lineup. And Mission
Yeah,
Ballroom is like coveted to me. It's the best venue I've ever been to. It has the best sound. So getting to play on that sound system was pretty insane. But I would say my favorite set or moment that I've played is I got to open for Marsh here in Denver again back in August, and that was at the church. And the church is iconic. And I've known Tom for a couple years at this point, and to be able to see him with his growth be where it is insane. And then to get to share that night with him in front of a crowd full of friends, full of new faces was like, man, I really took that moment in. It was an incredible opportunity, and I'm happy to have done it. But getting to look out at everybody at the church was just pretty insane.
I've seen pictures of the church, and that to me, it just looks like the ultimate. I would be nervous before that one. Do you get nervous? Do you get nervous and amped up?
I get nervous before every show, and I've always told myself when I stop getting nervous, I don't care enough, you know?
I agreed, but that when I saw those, I'm like, whoo, I would be nervous before that one. It's just there's something about the whole thing that you're like, wow, this is a
Yeah, I think the most nervous I've ever been for a show was I got to open for Camel Fat and Yoris Vorn. And that was at the Fillmore here in Denver. And that was when I was like, okay, this is the big leagues. Like they picked me to play this show. I gotta deliver here. You know, I played a good set, but I was a ball of nerves that entire time. It was hard for me to get out of my
the
head.
hands on the knobs.
Exactly. And it was huge stage. I was like, man, okay. And usually like for the Mission Ballroom show, I was opening and I knew like I'm playing for 45 minutes. There's going to be probably 30 to 50 people there in this huge venue. But at the Fillmore, it was packed right away. And I was like, okay, I got to settle in here.
Settle down, settle down. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, got a couple shows coming up, right? Not in January, but any place people can find you upcoming.
Yes. So for now, in early February, I'm going to be playing in Telluride. So if you're down for ski season, that'll be, I believe, on February 5th. And then this hasn't been announced yet, but I'll go ahead and announce it here because we're going to be announcing soon anyway. February 1st, 27th, somewhere in there, it'll be announced, but I'll be playing Spin in San Diego and Houseman will be headlining. So I get to be there with my homie and he's going to get to headline out there. And so if you're in SoCal, it'd be great to see you. Outside of that, some things I can't announce, but if you're going to be in Miami for Miami Music Week, you'll be able to catch me for some stuff there, some pretty cool stuff, and some things in the works in the Midwest. I've been wanting to get back to my home region there, so some stuff in the works there. But yeah, again, just being more intentional about it this year.
I love it. I went to Miami Music Week last year and brought my daughter to Ultra and to Factory Town. And we had the best time at Factory Town. Great venue. So much fun. So much fun.
I've never been to Miami, so I'm really looking forward to it.
You'll really, congratulations on that too. So
Thank you. Thank you.
no, thank you so much for the conversation. I really enjoyed it and felt like I've learned so much about you. And we'll get this posted, and we'll also share your links as well when we post it, so people can get in touch with you as well.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad we were able to get this to happen, and I really appreciate your time today.
Awesome. Well, happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.